Hi everyone, this is Destiny from the Book Clinic. This video will contain spoilers for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Tolkien's works defined the fantasy genre, inspired wave after wave of Lord of the Rings copycats. You'll be hard-pressed to find a fantasy novel that doesn't contain any elements inspired by that literary classic. People seem to take pieces of Tolkien's work, like including elves, dwarves, and orcs in their stories, or the long-lost true king stereotype, or the world-ending evil with one obscure weakness trope. However, everyone ignores what is, to me, the greatest part of Tolkien's writing: his endings, which are deeply entwined with the way Tolkien treats the Chosen One trope. And The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, both of the Chosen Ones, fail. Miserably. Let's tackle The Hobbit first. So for those of you who've never read the book, and or been unfortunate enough to have only seen the raging trash fire that was the movies, let me explain what the story is all about. Bilbo, a reserved and unambitious hobbit, is surprised when he finds out the wizard Gandalf has roped him into being the burglar for a dangerous expedition consisting of 13 dwarves and headed by dwarf prince Thorin Oakenshield. You see, Thorin's family used to have a kingdom within the Lonely Mountain and built up a hoard of riches. The most valuable trinket was a large gem called the Arkenstone. Unfortunately, one day, a giant and clever dragon named Smaug killed many of their people, stole the gold, and chased the dwarves out of their homeland. Thorin and the dwarves plan to take back their kingdom and treasure using a map that leads to a secret door in the mountain. Bilbo's job is to steal as much of the treasure as possible. Then the party dreams of killing the dragon and reclaiming their kingdom, Erebor. Bilbo, Gandalf, and the dwarves get captured by trolls, chased by goblins, saved by giant eagles, and basically go from one predicament to another as they slowly make their way toward their lonely mountain. Then, things get interesting. You see, you would typically expect the story to end with a gallant Thorin slaying the dragon in an epic battle. But that's not what happens. Barring that, readers likely expected Bilbo, as the main character, to somehow kill the dragon. Throughout the story, the fact that Thorin and the dwarves are wrong for drastically underestimating Bilbo is reinforced again and again. So obviously, Bilbo's going to go from not wanting to leave his house to finding a clever way to kill Smaug, right? Wrong. So what happens? Bilbo successfully sneaks into the Lonely Mountain, sees the dragon sleeping, and notices a chink in his nearly invincible scales. A talking bird overhears Bilbo explaining this to the dwarves, and when Smaug inevitably wakes and, angry at the fact that the nearby lake town helped the dwarves, goes to destroy it. And the bird whispers the news of his weakness to Bard the Bowman. Now, who the heck is Bard? You're probably asking. You never mentioned him. That's because he's a minor character who Bilbo and co met exactly one time, briefly, before going to the Lonely Mountain. That's right, he appears for less than a handful of pages. And when Smaug burns Lake Town to the ground, he's the one to kill him. The dwarves, for all their talk of bravery, sit around like idiots, wondering where the dragon's gone. Now, many people would find this infuriating. None of the heroes, including the main character, kill the villain? What sort of nonsense is this? The nonsense that's called brilliance. And let me explain why. The short version, it's subversive, it's original, and it fits the story's themes perfectly. The long version, this entire book is about how heroes often don't live up to their names and real heroes often don't look like one. It's about greed and arrogance and selfishness and the dishonorable things quote-unquote heroic people will do when it comes down to the bottom line. The dwarves saw themselves as these amazing warriors, these epic figures who would one day be legend. In reality, they got themselves into one sticky situation after another and were often only saved by Gandalf or Bilbo. They were not the people they believed themselves to be, and this becomes clearer and clearer as the story moves forward. Remember that The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings were based on Norse mythology. Tolkien was inspired by reading epics like Beowulf, where the hero is always virtuous and defeats the bad guys in a haze of glory, the type of epics that have a black and white morality. The Hobbit is about the shades of gray. And the biggest reason why Smaug's death works is because that's not the end of the book. Far from it. In fact, Tolkien barely lingers on Smaug's death and immediately focuses on the aftermath. And this is where it gets even better. See, the dwarves and Bilbo have holed themselves up in the Lonely Mountain, and they claim to the treasure. The people of Lake Town helped the dwarves during their journey, and well, it's the dwarves' fault their town was burned to the ground, so they rightfully demand compensation. Thorin refuses. Greed has a hold of him now. He's not willing to part with even a single gold coin. He invites his cousin and his army of dwarves to help defend the mountain. When the elves hear Smaug's death, they also lay claim to the treasure, citing ancient historical claims. Then, to make matters worse, an army of goblins and wargs, which had hounded the dwarves earlier, also come for a fight. This leads to what is called the Battle of Five Armies. Besides the residents of Lake Town, all the other parties involved in the battle are blinded by greed and are willing to start a war over the treasure, despite the fact that none of them are responsible for Smaug's death. All of them see themselves as the good guys, and that type of moral and thematic complexity in a novel is what I live for. They probably would have all killed each other. Sweet, innocent, clear-headed Bilbo didn't use the One Ring to steal the Arkenstone and use it to broker a truce. The elves, dwarves, and humans team up to fight the goblins and wargs and win. So those action junkies out there still get the climactic battle, but not at all in the way they were expecting to. How about Lord of the Rings, you might ask? It's widely considered archetypical in its use of the Chosen One trope. Except everyone seems to forget that Frodo was never chosen by anyone but Gandalf. One thing that's notable is the Chosen Ones in Tolkien's work are never chosen because of a prophecy or a birthright. Both Thorin and Frodo are considered the Chosen Ones simply because they and others believe themselves to be chosen. There's no oracle claiming that they're the hero who will accomplish this monumental task, just their possibly arrogant faith in themselves. In these ways, Tolkien went in the exact opposite direction as the medieval epics that inspired him. Proof that Frodo is no Chosen One is made clear when he very quickly becomes tempted by the ring. He uses it repeatedly throughout the 3 books, sometimes because he has to, but sometimes because he wants to. Whereas Bilbo was able to safely hold the ring for like 100 years or something like that, Bilbo, after what seems to be a few months to a year, starts succumbing to it. Yet, while you're reading the story, you never really doubt Frodo will do what's right and succeed at destroying the One Ring and the fires of Mordor. Except, LOL, he doesn't. No, and a twist that is infinitely more fascinating than the trope played straight, Frodo fails. At the last minute, he makes the same mistake as his predecessor and decides to keep the ring. The only reason the ring gets destroyed is because Gollum attacks Frodo, trying to steal the ring for himself, and accidentally falls into the volcano. And Gollum is only alive because Bilbo, in what appeared to be a foolish decision at the time, spared his life during the events of The Hobbit. If anything, Gollum, of all people, scraggly, evil, insane Gollum, saves the world by being evil. If anything, he, in a twisted way, is the Chosen One. Irony does not get richer than that. Or, alternatively, Sam Gamgee, Frodo's best friend, is the only one who holds the ring and isn't tempted by it. While Frodo struggled from the jump, so did Boromir and the elves and plenty of other people, Sam was able to carry it for him and has no desire to keep it for himself. One could argue, and I always have, that if there was a Chosen One who was destined to destroy the ring, it was him. Only the job got stolen by his best friend. Whether you consider the Chosen One to be Sam or Gollum or both, it certainly ain't Frodo. And in my opinion, it's one of the best subversions in fiction. So I hope this helps you go against the grain in your own writing. If you have a certain topic you want to cover, a piece of writing advice you'd like me to give, or if you want me to analyze any book, television show, movie, musical, whatever, please put it down in the comments and I'll be sure to take a look. As always, happy writing.